this is People of the State of Michigan versus Anthony Gonzalez, docket number 19-924FH. This is the time set for sentencing. Mr. Gonzalez, you were convicted of careless discharge of a firearm causing death. That is a felony punishable by up to 2 years in prison. And you are represented by Mr. Feinberg, who is present. And Mr. Feinberg, have you had a chance to go through the pre-sentence report with your client?
I have, thank you, Your Honor. I presented a letter up front there that's from his employer. He's been employed the entire time while COVID's been going on, and prior to that as well.
What restaurant is this?
Taco Bell, ma'am.
Oh, okay. All right, so you said, I'm sorry, no corrections to the pre-sentence report?
Yeah, I hadn't gotten to that part yet. I do understand.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. I can't breathe. So, all right, yeah, there are no corrections or deletions to make mention, with the exception, obviously, there's updated information, obviously, which I gave with regard to his employee and hours. Other than that, no corrections or deletions.
Okay, any objection to the scoring of the guidelines?
I'm not.
So I'll change it to Taco Bell on the face sheet anyway. Or, yeah, you said Taco Bell.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and did the people have any corrections to the report or objections to scoring?
Your Honor, I think you already caught this, the sentencing date on the face page, but that's it.
Got it. Okay, now the prosecutor is appearing remotely, and I have more people than I thought in the courtroom. Is there a victim or someone on behalf of the victim to be heard? Is anyone here for that reason? No, okay. Did the people wish to be heard?
Yes, Your Honor. I would say all around, it's clear that this is a devastating event. It was devastating on behalf of everyone involved, and that's very clear in the pre-sentence investigation report and from the nature of how we even charged the case. As Ms. Eckmeyer mentioned in her victim impact statement, she was frustrated with the charges to begin with, but we did take all of the circumstances into consideration when charging this case and when making the plea agreement that we did. But to echo her statements from the beginning, she has expressed frustration with how she's perceived the defendant to react to this event, in that she did not feel he demonstrated remorse, that she felt her family had been barraged on social media. I know that these are young kids and this can happen, but from the beginning, she has expressed that that has been made a devastating event even more traumatic for her and her family, which is why she's been the representative from the family, because she said the victim's father and mother can't even deal with this right now. So I will echo her statements and what she would request, which is jail for the defendant in some sense for this really to hit home, because she doesn't believe that it has in some ways based on his outward expressions towards this case on social media and how she's felt it's been continuing to go. So in the end, Your Honor, that's what she would request. We'd stand behind that request. I can understand why she would think it's appropriate. But we would ask this court to grant the defendant the Homes Youthful Trainee Act. He doesn't have any prior criminal history. We charge this in a manner that he would be eligible for that special status, in the hope that, you know, it was a devastating event, that he can grow and learn from it, and hopefully everybody can work through this to come out and, you know, for him to be a better person in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Feinberg?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll just open by saying this, is that it's very rare, obviously, that I had to see a client at this age that's charged with this type of event, obviously. At the time this happened, he was 17 years old, obviously with no criminal record whatsoever. And the basis of how this happened, obviously, this wasn't a situation where the gun was pointed at the individual. And I'm not trying to minimize anything, but obviously this is a NAGHAM or careless discharge. And all my client did, obviously, besides the weapon discharging in his hands, was that he was having sorry, my mask keeps falling down, this happens a lot. They asked him how they were going to shoot, they were going to go fire the weapon at all the people that were in the house, and the owner of the house that mom owned the weapon, who wasn't there at the time, they brought it out, and he asked, feel how light it is. And when he actually took the weapon in his hand to shake how light it was, the individual deceased walked in front of the backside of where he wasn't even facing, and the gun discharged. The individual that was killed in this was one of his best friends. And he was staying with him at the time, because this individual, and I'm not minimizing the mother and father situation, but something was going on. He was homeless at the time, and had been for quite some time, and was couch flopping from place to place, and basically was residing with my client at the time. And so he has not been on social media, but they have a very large family, and the way that people are reacting to this, as far as how it happened, should have happened, instead of saying, when someone says something in someone's ear and it goes down the line, and by the time it gets to the end, it's something completely different. But in this case, obviously, when the gun was discharged, they tried to assist him. He locked himself into the car because he was in shock, and he ran out to the car. I'm talking about the deceased. And they couldn't get the car open. They had to run back inside the house, grab the keys to the car. And this was all a very chaotic situation. And even more so for a 17-year-old. I mean, with a no prior record, never even seen it inside of a jail, a student working at the time. And it devastated him. And it devastated him in every aspect. And I've never involved in the actual harming of another individual. And I've had a lot of these cases now with the younger individuals that are involved with actually drastic type crimes that never were anticipated but just happened. And in this situation, it devastated to the point where he's in counseling, and he was in counseling before COVID. He couldn't even deal with it. I mean, I don't even know how people at his age, he's still growing, maturing wise. And, maybe there's an aspect of immaturity going on here as far as the social media aspect, because the mother of the deceased doesn't feel that he has accepted responsibility or is showing remorse. He's in my office crying. Every time I see him, he can't even believe it's happened. And, they had actually had a trip planned. They were going to take him down south to actually help him with his mental situation. I told him not to do that because I think that would be taken the wrong way, that he went down to Florida right when COVID started, when we didn't know how bad it was going to be, and that people might think that was, that he's being cavalier about that. He stayed here, never went out, stayed with his counseling, got a job, did all the right things, and when it speaks to actually what happened here, this is an act of negligence, maybe carelessness, gross negligence, but obviously there was no intent here, and he certainly didn't aim the weapon purposely at the individual that would wind up being shot. It was a long gun, it's a rifle, so it was actually, he was wielding it around. The person walked into the kitchen from the other side, the gun went off and shot him in the stomach. And, 4 people in the kitchen, and this happens, and they're all chaos at that point in time. They don't even know what to do. They didn't know if he got shot, they didn't even know what happened. So I'm not trying to minimize, as I'm saying here, and I certainly didn't know what was going through his mind when this happened of a 17-year-old, but I know what happened after I met him, what was going on with his family, and how much time they spent to try and help him in the counseling and making sure that they put him on Celexa. He was actually diagnosed with depression, and they put him on a benzodiazepine for that. He's continuing to do that, but the levels of the benzodiazepine had never been effectively done because of COVID, so they wouldn't allow him selectively to come back in and try and get his levels right, because this happened he was actually being treated when COVID really started kicking off mid-March. And right now he is on, obviously, Celexa, has been maintaining that. He's gainfully employed, no prior history, no nothing, and obviously a horrible act. And his best friend, the guy that was actually staying with him, to the point where, I don't want to say it was his best friend, because at this age they got a lot of friends, but this guy was staying with him on his house because he had nowhere to go. When I say this guy, I'm sorry, the deceased was staying with him at the time, and they developed a really good friendship with him, because of that. And it's, chaotic as much as I can say, but the bottom line is I don't know what's going through his head at the time this happened, but certainly he has not minimized this act, and certainly has not showed me that he's not regretful and remorseful in this incident, to the point where he's actually had to go to counseling himself, because he doesn't know how to deal with what happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, is there anything you wanted to say?
Yes, ma'am. I wrote a letter.
Okay.
Before I read it, I just want to say it's really hard for me. I dream about it, I think about it all the time. It's hard for me to cry, man. I just miss my mans. I miss my best friend. I didn't mean it. I never meant it. To begin with, I would like to give my deepest apology to Adam and the Barnett family. There are no words to explain how genuinely sorry I am for my actions. My intentions today were never to hurt anyone, especially not Adam. When I woke up on that morning of October 20th, I would never thought that one careless action would take my best friend and change my whole world for Adam forever. Adam and I weren't just friends, he was my brother. We spent every day with one another, did everything together. For so long, he was the big brother I never had. From the day we met, he had nothing but love and positives to give. We had so much more living to do. We had plans to grow up together. We had plans to grow up together and make more memories. I'm so sorry that I took that from you. Losing you was the hardest thing I ever dealt with, and knowing it was all my fault has been even worse. I beat myself up every day for my recklessness and stupid mistakes. I will never forgive myself. And to Adam, I dream of you every night. I pray to God to forgive me for what I've done, and pray to you for forgiving me as well. Over these past months, all I have done is reminisce and all the good times we shared and all the ones that we were supposed to come. Every day I wish I could go back and change everything. I wish I could have told you how much I loved you one last time. My only hopes now that is you know that I never meant to hurt you, and I'm so sorry.
So, Mr. Gonzalez, have you posted on social media about this? You're not? Okay. Well, this is a very difficult one. Nobody thinks you did this on purpose. That's not even what the charge is. You didn't do this on purpose. It's a careless discharge, but the consequence of your carelessness is huge. I mean, this young man lost his life. And, you know, it's very difficult to balance out your, I think, real remorse and genuine sadness over what has happened with the horrible consequences and the fact that, you know, some impact sentence should be there in order to address this young man's loss of life. And I don't mean to sound, I don't know, I hope this doesn't sound wrong, but, you know, sometimes people, even when they cause something this bad through carelessness, sometimes even they feel like it's better for them if they are punished in some way, because it actually helps to get past the guilt a little bit, because you did it, you didn't mean to do it, but it happened through carelessness, and then you pay for it, you pay a price for it, and it helps to even things out for some people. I just can't imagine his, I think it's his aunt, and, you know, how she must feel if you were to walk out of here today with just YTA probation. I just don't think that would be right. It's not right for anybody. And I'm not saying that, again, I know you didn't do this on purpose. It's not an intentional act, and I know you have no record, and I think that you can do well going forward in the future, and I think this has made a big impact on you already, and that you are taking it seriously, but I just don't think that the judicial system and the criminal justice system and the community could look at this and say, no further sanction needed. You know, I just think that it is for impact. So, you know, it doesn't, there's a balancing here, you know, you will get some leniency, you will get some consideration for the things that you've spoken of, but then there's the other side of the balance, and that is punishment, which is what sentences are partly for. So I'll grant your petition for treatment under the Holmes Youthful Trainee Act, and you can complete probation, and you cannot have this on your record. And if you complete probation and you do everything else that I'm going to order, you would deserve not to have this on your record. So you can give yourself that. But I'm going to grant the petition for treatment under the Homes Youthful Training Act, place you on probation for a period of 24 months, 60 days in the Ingham County Jail with credit for 1 day served. You have to pay $130 to the Crime Victims Fund, $68 in state costs, oversight fees in the amount of $240 payable at the rate of $10 a month, costs in the amount of $500 based on the State Court Administrative Office calculated average cost of a criminal case in Ingham County. Additional conditions of probation are no use or possession of alcohol or controlled substances, comply with both drug and alcohol testing as your agent directs. You must complete outpatient or residential substance abuse treatment. If at some point your agent sees that as necessary, you must participate in an adult education or GED program as directed by your agent. You must complete an MRT program. You must not engage in any assaultive, abusive, threatening, or intimidating behavior. No contact with anyone you know to have a felony record. You can't change your residence unless you first get written permission from your agent. You cannot possess a weapon while you're on probation. And you must comply with all the written and verbal orders, including allowing the agent into your home at any time, submitting to a search of your personal property without need of a warrant, report any changes to your agent within 24 hours, be in your approved residence between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. unless you're otherwise excused. And if you have a confirmed verified work schedule, then that can certainly be adjusted, but your agent will take care of that. Mr. Gonzalez, you have the right to file an application for leave to appeal your conviction and your sentence in this matter. You're entitled to an attorney at public expense to assist you in doing that. If you're making a request for one, you have to make it within 42 days of today's date. It explains that more on the form that you're now receiving, and you are remanded to the custody of the sheriff.
Your Honor, may I, with regard to the possibility of earned early release and work release, is that a possibility, obviously?
Not work release, but I have not precluded earned early release.
And as far as the actual inmates that are actually being released as part of the code because they're at high, they're in that high area of actually possibility, I mean, he obviously has asthma and stuff like that. Are you going to preclude that if they make that determination there?
My understanding is that the jail is taking precautions and they are protecting the inmates' health and safety. I know, I've heard, I've read that there has been an outbreak.
Big time, yeah.
But it's not because the jail hasn't been taking every measure they can to protect the health and safety of the inmates, which I care very, very much about.
Certainly.
So I'm satisfied that it will be okay. And
Okay.
they aren't releasing anyone without my approval, so.
Very good. All right, thank you very much, Your Honor.